Welcome to Winning on Issues, where Texas politics meets strategy and implementation. I'm your host, James Dickey, former chairman of the Republican Party of Texas. My guest today is Al Davis, director of the Texas A&M Forest Service. Director Davis is a 27-year Marine Corps veteran who retired as a colonel, then built national programs in emergency response and cybersecurity preparedness before anyone was talking about either. He ran the New Orleans public school system, co-founded the National Cybersecurity Preparedness Consortium, and chaired the National Domestic Preparedness Consortium. When Texas A&M needed someone to lead an agency through one of the most devastating wildfire seasons in state history, and then transform how Texas fights fires altogether, they tapped a crisis manager, and we're honored to have him here with us. Director Davis, welcome.
James, it's great to be here, and you really give me too much credit. You know, we don't accomplish anything on our own, so it's all about teamwork, collaboration, and listening, learning, and being a lifelong learner like I am.
Well, those are absolutely critical elements in the role you are in now. Yes. Tell us, what motivated you to be inspired to want to take on this mission?
I like that word, inspired versus told. But it happened on a Friday evening. I was in a meeting in my previous agency where I was Deputy Agency Director and Chief Operations Officer of the agency TEAX, Texas A&M Engineering Extension Service, that does training of first responders. In a meeting, I got a text that is, from a friend who I worked with on Hurricane Harvey, Texas Rebuild Texas Commission. And she said, you and I need to go see the chancellor at 2:00. And I'm like, what did I do?
You got called into the principal's office.
Yeah, I got called in the principal's office by the vice principal. And so anyway, the gentleman who was running the agency at that time decided to retire. And so I was asked, did I have trees? I said, yes, sir, at my home. Okay. And get in here. Here's what I want you to do. And I said, okay, when? Monday morning at 8:00. Okay, so I made a phone call to my wife, and I said, guess what? And she says, so what do you think? I said, no, what do you think? She says, well, try it, for a little bit. And I thought I'd just be there for a year until they found a permanent one. They called a special board meeting after 2 years. That's to get the 2-year technical assistance state requirement. And going into my 5th year right now. And it's been fun.
That is really, really amazing. And so it is it's a full-fledged state agency.
Yes.
But it's actually part of the A&M system.
That's correct. And that happened after Hurricane Harvey. All right. The legislature did that. And it's very unique. All the state emergency response agencies, with the exception of the Department of Public Safety, come under the A&M system. The unique thing is Texas Division of Emergency Management, TIFMAS, TEAX, I'm going acronyms now, my agency, TMFS, AgriLife Extension Agency, and the Texas Veterinarian Medical Diagnostics Laboratory. I think I got that right, TVMDL. We all work together. We meet together regularly, and we know each other. And in emergency response, the first time you don't want to meet someone is when the stuff hits the fans.
Right.
So the fact that we know each other, we talk to each other regularly and meet. Matter of fact, I just had a meeting with them 3 days ago, and I just texted Nim Kidd, the chief of TDM, yesterday. We're going to meet next week on airplanes and things of that nature. So it works for Texas.
Well, that kind of coordination is really important. And frankly, the Forest Service experience in dealing with big issues in hard to reach areas when the environment isn't positive is why you guys are responsible for all disaster response, not just Forest Service.
Mm-hmm. That's correct. That's a very good point. We are all hazards. Okay. So when you look at our mission statement, it says conservation, protection, and leadership. Under conservation, that's mitigation, doing best management practices with landowners, giving them technical assistance on plant and pest diseases for trees and plants and what have you. And under the protection is wildland fire, but also under protection, we have an all hazards responsibility when you talk about recovery. During the last snowstorm here, we just had ice, I should say, not snow, okay? But we actually had about 240 people, along with our TIFMAS, Texas Interstate 5 Mutual Aid System partners, working with TxDOT and what have you to do all sorts of things, pulling people off roads. When there's down power lines, our folk get out there, and our sawyers, they do cutting to have roads of egress and ingress there for that. So there's a lot of stuff we do. And we were there also in the Kerrville floods, also helping with others there also. So it's all about teamwork. We don't do it all by ourselves, but we do have mission spaces there where it's important that we show up and lend what we do best. Now, under leadership, lastly, we actually do leadership classes with civilians, and we call cooperators or collaborators, so they can also help to tell our story.
Well, and your work is absolutely an example of an ounce of prevention being worth a pound of cure.
Pound of cure, exactly.
And so doing that kind of coordination, training in advance is so critical.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, and that's also a good segue to talking about the tiered response that Texas runs.
Yes. First of all, we're partners with the VFDs, volunteer fire departments, and the local fire departments, paid in combinations, which is about 1,832 of them total. First, all emergency response starts local. Right? And so if there's a fire or something, you have the VFDs, and then if the VFDs are not able to handle it because of the mass of it, then they bring the locals in. If the locals need us, then they bring us in. So when fires get very, very complex, because of the training that our folk have specifically in wildland firefighting, then we are called in. And with that said, I always like to tell folk that we're not the cavalry. All right, we do it in partnership. We have 59 offices around the state. We have about 540 people in the agency. About 300 are really qualified to fight wildland fires because we have standards for training with the National Wildfire Coalition Group. Okay, and what happens is that no matter what job they do, from the boots on the ground, be it resource specialists, be it sawyers, be it crew bosses and engine bosses and what have you, they have to have special training. And so when it gets complex, I like to use that word, then they call us in. And then if we need strike teams or what have you, that's when our TIFMAS people come in also. And if it gets beyond that, then we'll bring in resources from out of the state, and we do the same for others around the country.
Well, and that's really positive for you to partner up with them and not build silos and not duplicate effort.
That's correct. Exactly.
And that's a responsible way to handle things for the taxpayer as well.
Oh, yes.
Well, but one of the challenges is you're recruiting firefighters and you're expecting them to be very well prepared and very well trained. That's got you competing against both the feds and the private sector and cities.
Oh, yes.
How do you keep and recruit the needed talent you got?
Well, that's a very, very good point there. You heard me say previously, we're not the cavalry, okay? And when I came into this job, I thank my resource specialist, and that's the boots on the ground. And I have a special kinship with them because it's like leading Marines, okay? Not only the green, but the khaki and just the physical part of it. And at 75 years old, it makes me feel like a youngster to be around them. But they were making about $13 an hour. And then we got that raised up to 15. And then we went to the legislature, and where they are now at, the entry level is $20.45, which is very important. And it's not so much about the money, James. It's about, you don't want a youngster out there thinking about, does my family have money for food? Did the car break down? It's a vacation or what have you, where they're not thinking about what they're doing, okay, and thinking about the family, okay? So that's one part of it, getting them compensated properly. That's very important. That's important for retention and to make sure that they're not siphoned off somewhere else. If I can tell a story right quick, when I first got into this job, and I like to get out to the field. As a matter of fact, when I leave here, I'm going to be visiting 3 offices. So there was a kid who was brand new, didn't have his uniform. It was a hot summer day. I think it was July or something. He's sweating. And I said, did that kid need water? And, while they briefed me on something, they said, no, sir, he's okay. I said, what about a hat? I'll give him my hat. And they said, sir, good man, but we're going to lose him. I said, why are we going to lose him? He says, he makes $13 at Mickey D's. They're making $15. Okay, his wife is with child, and guess what? He lives in a 25-foot trailer with his mother-in-law. Okay, so that really motivated me to make sure that we got him compensated properly. The other thing is to have an environment where people know that we, the leadership, not only me, but my leaders out there, that they care about them. So we bring our leadership through training. We have them take their Myers-Briggs personality type indicators. They take a class in emotional intelligence and consensus team decision-making. That's in addition to those hard skills that they need to supervise and themselves, the resource specialists, area operations chiefs, regional operations chiefs, regional fire coordinators and all can do their professional technical jobs.
Yeah, leadership is so important, especially in an organization like yours where coordination with others is a key to success. Most people don't realize just how big the forest industry is in Texas. Yes. Can you talk about that first?
Yes, I will certainly will. As far as forested lands, there's about 64 million acres. Over 90% is privately owned. In East Texas, you have the working forest where you have a lot of economy there. And then in Central and West Texas, there's different types of forested acres. West Texas, obviously, not many big trees and what have you, okay? And so that's very, very big. And we do a yearly report, and we coordinate with the federal government on it. The forest economy contributed $54 billion, about 200,000 jobs. And that's big. So again, to really do the conservation and the mitigation and whatever and tamp down fires and what have you, I mean, that's the importance of it also. So, and again, when you have like pest and what have you, be it emerald ash borer or oak wilt or what have you, when we talk about healthy lives, healthy trees, healthy lives, healthy communities, all that stuff is important in the big aggregate.
It absolutely is, and that's one of the elements of working with forestry is both the stewards who own the land, as you said, 90% private, them doing sustainable harvesting.
Yes.
Not only gives them a better asset for the long run, but also continues to have the filtration.
That is correct. Okay, the filtration, filter water and what have you, because again, when we talk about natural resources, we can't forget about water. And so trees play such an important part. And I'll be honest with you, that when I came into this job, and I had worked with this agency before on Hurricane Harvey, I knew they did the fire thing, because of the big fire we had in Bastrop. And I said, this is easy, right? But woe unto me when I found out this conservation thing and all these things about trees and what have you. I took some online courses, I do different podcasts and what have you, and go to different meetings. But I learned so much from my teammates. We have a bevy of professionals there, PhDs and others who know so much. So as I sit here as Al Davis, I call myself the Chief Advocacy Officer, right? But we have so many people who know so much, much, much more than me. Then I have to sometimes not play colonel, sit back and listen, and then be able to articulate what we do to a layman. And the same thing as when I go to the legislature representing the agency, I want to break it down or dumb it down, I like to call it, at the 8th grade level as we're dealing with Marines, on making sure people understand the importance of what we do in layman's language.
Well, and to do that, you guys have a very clear 3-element motto that you follow. Explain that.
Well, you mean the conserve, protect, lead. Yes, okay. And so conservation, okay. And I always say there's a direct relationship between conservation and protection. The more you mitigate, then the less occurrences of fires you're going to have. And then under the protection is to do those things to make sure that not only we are doing it, but that folk who own the land also are doing things to tamp down the occurrence of fires. And under the leadership, it's not only leading within our agency, but outside of our agency with the citizens by giving them technical assistance, engaging with them. I can get an email and says, hey, I got these spots on the leaves on my tree. Okay, Director Davis, what can I do about it? Director Davis gets on that email and forwards it to my chief operations officer. I copy who I think's going to handle it, and then I'll tell the folks somebody's going to reach out to you, and they do that. So that's why I'm just so very proud about being a part of this agency, because they are some professional, selfless servants.
Well, and your agency absolutely is responsive. And one of the things that we've seen in some of the other agencies, we were having a great conversation with the Railroad Commission.
Yes.
They've had a really neat opportunity to turn waste product and expenses in operation into revenue sources for the private sector.
Yeah.
You guys in your work, you produce millions of tons of logging residue.
Yeah.
Are there initiatives, are there companies working to try to take that and turn that into, instead of an expense for you, a benefit?
Yes, and for us, and let me be very clear here, that I didn't even mention yet the Texas Forestry Association, all right, and consulting foresters, okay? And so we visited the mills. I've actually visited several harvesting operations. I went to a plant where they're doing like pellets and things of that nature that go overseas and what have you, biochar, biofuels, nanocellulose, and all these words I can't even spell, but it's so much that happens in the aftermarket or downstream. Right, and that's very, very important. One of my favorite desserts is no sugar ice cream. I won't call the name of it, but I was telling somebody how I like to put Chessman's cookies in it with orange juice, and I stir it up. And they said, "Did you know that there was sawdust in that ice cream?" I'm like, "What?" Yeah, because to help it, congeal and stay together and what have you. And that's just several examples how we take the waste there, quote unquote, just like a factory. And I've visited several auto factories and what have you, where the waste is money. Okay, if it's managed right. And I will also say one thing I'm very proud of. We have Dr. Aaron Stoudemire, who actually works with wood products, right? With the new Appland Center that's going to be on the Texas A&M campus, we're going to be using consolidated mass timber. All right. And that's very, very important. And also because of his work and the work with others in that big group, they're going to be using East Texas yellow pine.
That's awesome.
Okay. And so that's a win-win. And so that's how us working with others, to include Texas Forestry Association, how we can make a positive economic impact on the state of Texas.
Well, and between your positive impact proactively and your ability and need to address big disasters, the legislature stepped up in a massive way this last session. Talk a little bit about what they did and what it means for your agency.
Yes. Well, first of all, the legislature gave us over $500 million, and that's with a B, billion. And so that demonstrates the trust and the confidence they have in this agency. The first part of that was $257 million to purchase aircraft to fight wildland fires. And so right now we're in that long, arduous process of doing RFPs, doing scoring, talking to different companies and what have you. I just had an update briefing on yesterday on how we're doing. And we initially went to ask the legislature for 4 large air tankers, 3 multi-mission aircraft, and 2 helicopters. So to get that number, which is 9, 4, 3, and 2, it takes so much work to do. We've been working on that, for the last 6 to 8 months. And then we can expect to have the first delivery of something as early as the summer of 26. Okay, when we're talking maybe a 0 time to refurbish large air tanker as late as the summer of 28. So it's not like going to the parking lot at a car dealership and saying, I want that truck or I want that Corvette or what have you, that's just sitting there. So again, there's a lot that goes through that. We have to sign non-disclosure agreements, reach out to a lot of people and what have you. And in the interim, we do in fact get support from the federal government, but it's nothing like having your own where we can pre-position and park them there. And we also have a great relationship with the Texas Division of Emergency Management and the Texas Military Department, Major General Seltzer, where if we need an aircraft for something, if the feds can't get us anything there like we had in Smokehouse Creek, then we have other partners in other states that can help us.
Well, and we saw in things like Smokehouse Creek why it was so important that we have our own.
Our own. That is correct. That is correct. The other part of that over $500 million is the unfunded equipment request for those volunteer fire departments, $236 million. To date, my capacity building department has already pushed out $181 million of that 236. So again, fantastic. And those are the things that I had no visibility on before taking this job. And that's so important. It's not only the apparatus, the trucks and what have you, but it's also the protective personal equipment and training also. So again, those things, they're all partners, just like the TIFMAS people and the Texas Commission of Fire Protection and the State Firefighters and Fire Marshals Association. We all work together, and that's very, very important. And when I go back to that theme of we're not the cavalry, but with that said, we're very proficient, we're very professional and competent, and we go through a lot of different training that a lot of other folk don't go through.
Well, and as you said, front line of defense is frequently those volunteer fire departments, especially in rural areas.
Yes, of course. Yes.
And so there were hundreds of those volunteer fire departments who had already gone through the whole process of applying and saying, we desperately need a piece of equipment. We desperately need a PPE, more PPE.
Yes.
So that we can fight those fires better.
That's correct. And it helps us.
It does.
Because, again, our emergencies start and end local.
Yeah. And having an agency like yourself be a force multiplier and take advantage of the and leverage the resources that are already out there, that's fantastic.
Yes, sir. For sure, James.
It was great that the legislature recognized that and then support that. Well, obviously on the RFPs for the planes, there's not a lot of companies out there that supply air tankers for fire suppression.
That's correct.
So that part, while it's onerous for your team and it's a lot of work and it's important to get right.
Yes.
There's not a lot of companies involved in that, but you've got a lot of other RFPs out right now as well.
That's correct. Well, the others are having to do with, of course, I talked about the fire equipment, but we're also building 5 new offices around the state. I went to a groundbreaking in Fredericksburg recently. There's one coming up in McGregor, Smithville, San Angelo, and I'm forgetting one of them here, but my facilities guys say, I told you it was 5, but it is 5. So those RFPs are out there, and we're just finishing a building in Hudson also. All right. So, and it's important that you ask, so how do you keep people? And I talked about training and pay and what have you, but having the proper facilities to do their jobs.
It does matter.
That matters. And the Marine in me, if I see something that doesn't work and they know, don't let Al see that because he's going to make a phone call on one of my visits. It could be for a sign that's crooked or needs to be painted, okay, or what have you. We want to represent ourselves in a professional manner, and we want to take care of our people.
Well, that's absolutely a fantastic thing to do it. And that's why being out in the field is so important for a leader.
Of course it is.
Well, you mentioned the Smokehouse Creek fire.
Yes.
It was devastating, and their ranchers still dealing with that.
Yes.
We talked about the aircraft. What are the other big gaps that you identified from that terrible experience that you're using to make things better going forward?
Super, right? And it's, again, I always talk about when you say me, I take it as me, but it's about team and others.
Right.
Okay. And I always want to underscore that because, again, we don't accomplish it all by ourselves. But in any incident we go to, big or small, we do after action reports. You can always learn. You can always learn. If I find somebody got burned on the hands, we say, why is that? We just don't say, well, gosh, she didn't do this, that, or she didn't do that. We do after action reports. Facilitated learning analysis is what we do. The other thing, like communications, and I'm not talking like you and I just speaking to each other. We have these microphones in front of us, okay? We got to be able to communicate. It's the land out there is expansive. And then when you have the chaos of a wildland fire, you got to be able to talk. When you got an aircraft in the air, you got to be able to talk to them, the airspace and things of that nature. And so if you can't communicate, okay, because everybody got different radios, different frequencies and all that stuff, then that creates chaos, vulnerability, uncertainty, ambiguity, the VUCA thing that I learned in the military, okay? So all those things there, that one part is communication, all right? And the other part of it is what the communities can do themselves, okay, Firewise, to really mitigate the spread of fires. Borger, city of Borger does an excellent job in that. So we try to take those models of excellence and to try to infuse that or educate others to say, go and look at what they did. All right. And then we actually are still back there in that area because we do recovery, the replanting of trees and what have you, especially in Smokehouse Creek. And we, myself and my deputy agency director and one of my area operations chiefs, whose area that is, Lee Anderson, actually went back there and talked to the county judges and what have you, and says, this is the things we need to do. We talked to the ranchers. Now we use the ranchers and their helicopters. Before, we had to shut them down because of the airspace and the safety. We didn't have procedures. So we brought the ranchers in. A couple of gentlemen I'd like to mention, Luke Biochar there, Jason Abraham, helped us to facilitate that.
That's fantastic.
It was tough. And again, our hearts went out to those people who lost their homes, people lost lives, a couple, 3 people there. And but it's important that you go back and says, okay, what can we do better working together? Okay. And so I think those things are extremely important there for sure.
That is absolutely key. Now, one of the things in Smokehouse Creek is that we actually, in the after action, we were able to figure out what the cause of the fire was. Yes. Okay. Now, the good thing about that is several utility companies have come to us and we reached out. All right. Just like we do with the ranchers and the railroad commissions for who we share the reports with. Okay. Because folks need to know that. And that's a principle, by the way, of emergency response and emergency management. Who needs to know what I know? But they have cameras out there in the field and what have you, and we get access to those things. Okay, so we can look out there and see, hey, maybe we need to go and check this out. Maybe we need to pre-position here, or maybe there's some mitigation the company needs to do around the poles because, again, we're not the cavalry. We can't do it all. So I think having all of those folk talking to each other and we talking to them and what have you is very important because, again, together everybody achieves more, and that's where this team concept is very important. Absolutely. And the legislature also took some steps requiring utilities to...
Yes, to do some things. That is correct. That is right. Because, again, it's just not us. And I kind of jokingly sometimes tongue-in-cheek tell people we don't start the fires. We put them out. So please help us.
Absolutely. Well, when you get these aircraft, as you said, it's going to be 9 aircraft, and it'll absolutely be better for us to have them under state control and not be dependent on the feds or availability or conflicts with other areas. But still, Texas is pretty big, even by air.
Yeah.
What's your plan for pre-staging those aircraft, or are you going to switch them around during the
Well, yes, we are. That's the short answer. But let me say this. Aircraft are a tool, okay? The battle is won on the ground with those boots on the ground, resource specialists, those volunteer fire department folk, and those TIFMAS strike teams. That's where it's won on the ground. air tamps it down. Now, as far as your question, we had, I think when I came in, maybe 7 tanker bases. We have right now between 11 and 13, I believe the number is, because we're always making, doing agreements and talking to people. Like in Borger wants us to put up an air tanker there also, okay, and have a hangar there and what have you. And what we try to do is to centralize, so you can go from here to here, here to here, in a moment's notice. Now, with that said, in addition to aircraft, we need more boots on the ground. All right. Texas has 254 counties. You heard me mention about 300 trained firefighters. So if you do the Marine math, that's about 1.1 firefighter per county. That's not enough. All right. And our standard of wanting to respond is to get from here to here in less than an hour. Right now, it's about 90 minutes. Okay, and so if the more you delay, the more that fire spreads. There may not be a VFD right there, okay, but we need more people for sure, because we want to put these teams strategically in certain places that we know have diffused. Or if you look at the history and the data from past years, that's pre-positioning. So we need more people. And in this 90th legislative session, I'm going to ask for about 40 to 50 more people, and I'm going to ask for more operations and maintenance money, okay, because it's so important, again, making sure you have the number of people and that they're resourced properly, because the airplanes are not going to fight on the ground. They're dropping from the air. And if that wind, is not 40 or 50 miles per hour, but if it's 10 miles per hour, it can just blow it off target or what have you. And we're also making use of drones and more technology now. And that's so very, very important.
It's absolutely an important thing to do, to make sure to take advantage of technology improvements.
Yes.
And yes, the difference between a 1 hour response or a 2 hour response might be the difference between a 100-acre fire and 100,000 acres.
Exactly. And that 30 minutes versus under an hour, those 450 people or 400 people on the hour charge is much better than 300, so we can position them in the right place, for sure.
That's so important.
Yes.
Well, obviously fire's a huge impact and has been appropriately the focus of a lot of attention, but you guys deal with other things as well. One of the things we've been worried about lately is beetles.
Yeah. Emerald ash borer, okay? And the reason that's so important, that's when we talk about the pests and diseases and what have you, and the diseases that the pests cause. And the key is they destroy trees, right? And so if we destroy trees, when we talk about healthy trees, healthy people, healthy communities, then that pushes the occurrences of that down, of having a healthy community and healthy people. So that's why that's so important. And that is why our folk and those that are foresters do technical assistance with those landowners, where they can give them some mitigation strategies and what have you to address those beetles and other type like oak wilt and what have you that can happen also.
Well, and you guys have been doing mapping, including mapping in city areas.
Yes.
If a beetle like this causes a problem and wipes out a bunch of trees, it's not only a negative for no longer having the tree, it's a direct cost. The cities have to pay to remove these.
To remove them, that's correct. And that's why in our Forest Action Plan, and that's a 10-year plan we have, and we review it every 5 years, and I get briefed on it twice a year. We have the Community Wildfire Protection Plan. That's part of that also. But we have strategies and programs and money from the federal government that folks can access to help combat those things.
We saw a couple of years ago, there was some drama in Dallas because the city of Dallas had budgeted millions of dollars to map their own tree cover.
Yes.
Instead of spending millions of dollars on police and other things that were more necessary.
Yes.
The voters put a stop to that, so that's good. But you guys actually do that mapping, so the cities don't have to. if they'll take advantage of the services you're
That's
already
correct.
providing.
There are a lot of services, technical services that we provide, and we have a website, and we advertise often about when we have money, grant money, right? And that money comes from the federal government. And what folk need to understand that if we can't make a private landowner do it, right? But if we don't access that money, then it goes back to the feds, but it goes to other states. Okay, so that's very, very important, and that's why you heard me mention 59 offices, right, and 38 staffed and equipped to fight fires. Those others do a lot of different things there, okay, lots of different things. And regarding the federal government, if I may, at this point, we were talking about timber and things of that nature in the mills and harvesting. We actually worked with TFA to bring a staffer down from the House Agricultural Committee. We had him for 3 days. I spent 3 days with this individual. We took him to 2 private landowners. He visited TFA, Texas Forestry Association, Rob Hughes, my counterpart there. And we also had him go to see harvesting and took him to a mill. So him going back to tell that story to that committee really helps us get the money, and it helps ultimately the state of Texas.
Absolutely. Well, you've said that moving firewood is the primary way that the pests spread.
Yes.
How do you get people to take that seriously? How do you spread the word on that?
Well, we talk about it. We have, as I said, on our website, we talk about it. We push out information and what have you, and we get with the different news media and what have you, we often do stories and we talk about that stuff. And, just like anything else, James, and I'm a person and you're a person, we're all human. We kind of do our thing, or so we think, okay? But we have, just like fires start during burn bans, we'll see people moving wood, and that just, because if that insect is with that wood, they're going there. And so they don't stop and say, this is a state line, a county line, a property line. We need to turn around the bugs. They don't do that. And so that's why it's important to really, really not do that, and to really just do the smart thing.
Well, and living right here in Central Texas.
Yes.
God bless our live oaks, and love those. Hate cedar, but love those.
Cedar fever.
Yeah, exactly. What oak wilt is obviously a big issue.
Yes.
What's the one thing that every landowner and homeowner needs to know about as we head into spring about oak wilt?
Yeah, well, there again, moving wood around and also paying attention to and inspecting your trees, right? And when you see something that doesn't look right, just give us a call, all right? And if we can't help you, then you have consulting foresters also there. So again, they're just little things that we can do, no different than I was driving my truck last night and the yellow light came on, right? And I pulled over and I said, okay, do I need to check the oil? Put the oil in. That was a quart low, all right? And the light's still on. So when I get back to College Station this evening and tomorrow morning, I'm going to bring it into the shop. I'm going to go to the professionals and say, what do I need to do? Okay, so we work with a lot of also homeowner associations who see that. And I actually saw, I believe it was in Austin, where in this community, a lot of oak trees, beautiful trees. And we actually did some things to intervene to sort of mitigate the spread of that oak wilt, where we went underground, okay, to the root system to put the proper pesticide there, or antidote to maybe help mitigate that.
That's fantastic.
Yes. And again, that's one of the things I didn't know about.
Yeah, and most people don't. I'm happy to help spread the word about it. One of the other things the legislature did last time, you guys got a lot of attention in the 89th. They created a prescribed burn manager self-insurance pool.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
That's big, because prescribed fire is big on helping to mitigate the big fires. And obviously, if there's no insurance there, those prescribed burn managers are saying, gosh, they don't want the liability. So right now, I think it's about $5 million, okay, for this first year, and then $5 million the next year. And we have a planning and preparedness chief. She's out there working with those prescribed burn managers to get the word out, to make sure they know how to access that money. Because again, we take care of the state forests and national lands, right? who takes care of the rest? And it's those consultant foresters and those prescribed burn managers who can do that for those citizens.
Yeah. And by comparison, as opposed to a state like Nevada, where 90% of the state is federal land.
Yes.
In Texas,
it's just the opposite. It's over 90%. Okay.
Is private.
Private. Right. So again, that's why we have to engage all of those folk.
That's so important. Well, we heard stories from Borger about how those prescribed burn buffers saved neighborhoods.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about Firewise and how HOAs should use that.
Yes. And Firewise it's just the things of when you see a lot of, for example, foliage and fuel, we call it there, is to mitigate that. Okay. I mean, around your homes, it could be gravel, it can be concrete or what have you. And just having a lot of extraneous stuff that can catch fire around the home, that's important to just eliminate that stuff. There's right now with the number of people moving in to Texas right now, then you have a merging of the wildland in the urban areas. So Firewise is so important to make sure that when that fire's out your back door there's something that can contain it there. And there's even a new course that we partner with the Texas Commission of Fire Protection, where structural firefighters and our folk are going through something where if there's a neighborhood that's a lot of wooded areas around it, then they do special training on making sure that the structural folk are there to contain that and not have it move from the wooded areas to the urban areas or to those homes. So that's something there that's very, very smart to do. But Firewise USA, just Google that and it'll give you a lot of great ideas on what the communities can do. Because again, we're not the what? The cavalry.
Exactly. Well, and the basic premise is just don't provide a fire with all the fuel to go right to your house.
That is correct. Exactly. Exactly.
Well, what's one thing that you would suggest that anybody listening could do, or most people listening could do, to yield a safer, better forest ecosystem for Texas?
Well, first of all, we have a responsibility to really take care of the natural resources for the next generation. So let's just do the smart thing.
Well, couldn't agree with that more. As you look back at your 2 years as interim director and your time since then as director, what's the one metric that you would like most to have define your legacy?
Oh, gosh. My legacy. Simply stated, I just want to leave it better than I found it.
That is such a great way to look at things. Is there anything as we wrap up that you would like people to be sure to take away from this?
From this, we have a lot of selfless servants, not only in the Texas A&M Forest Service, but emergency responders all over the state of Texas. We need your support. We need you to listen to us when we advise, okay? And there's some things you can do to help us do our jobs.
That's fantastic. Director Davis, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, James, for having me.